Okay, let's dive straight in. We're looking at the very top end of the London property market today, prime London. And, well, the news isn't great for sellers. It seems even the most expensive postcodes aren't defying gravity right now. We've got some fresh data from Knight Frank and also some analysis from Jefferies London that paints a pretty stark picture. Our job today is really to get behind those numbers for you. Why is prime London facing this deepening slump?
It really is deepening. That's the right word. The data confirms it, and there are, as Knight Frank puts it, no signs of easing. This isn't just market cooling. It feels quite specific.
Right, let's get to the core figures then. Talk about prime central London, PCL, the Mayfairs, the Knightsbridges of the world. Average prices there dropped 3.2% in the year to August.
And that 3.2% figure is actually the biggest annual fall they've recorded since March 2021, so it's significant.
And not just prices. Overall sales transactions, looking across both central and outer London, were down too, about 6% year over year.
Yeah, but here's where it gets even more dramatic, I think. You look at those recent Jefferies London figures, they weren't just looking at transaction numbers, but the actual value of properties sold.
Yeah.
And in London's 6 most desirable boroughs, that value reportedly dropped by as much as 60%. 60 over the last 12 months.
Oh, hang on. 60%. 60% of the value vanishing. That sounds less like hesitancy and more like, well, a market hitting the brakes hard.
Yeah.
Tom Bill at Knight Frank called it an understandable mood of hesitancy. Is that putting it mildly?
It might be, yeah. I mean, it's certainly a very, very strong reluctance to transact at that top end. And Knight Frank, they've been pretty clear about what they think is driving it. They've pointed directly at the government's clampdown on the non-dom tax rules.
Ah, right. Explain that connection for us. Why do the non-dom rules hit this specific market so hard?
Well, basically, those rules impact the tax status for people earning money offshore. For the ultra-wealthy international buyers who often treat prime central London property as, a discretionary asset or investment.
Like a safe deposit box, almost.
Sort of, yeah. If the UK becomes less tax-friendly for them, they don't buy. Or they wait. It's not like they need that Knightsbridge flat tomorrow.
Okay, that makes sense. And that need versus want distinction seems really key when you compare PCL to prime outer London, or POL. What did the data show there?
That's where you see the nuance. Prices in POL were much more stable, actually up slightly, 0.5% annually, though they did see a small quarterly dip recently.
So 0.5% up versus 3.2% down. That's quite a difference.
It is. And Tom Bill made exactly this point. POL buyers are often driven by different needs. They have to move, maybe for schools, maybe for a specific job location. They're generally less influenced by those big global tax policy shifts that might spook an international investor looking at PCL.
Right. PCL is more of an investment vehicle. POL is more about, well, living.
Pretty much. PCL gets hit by global finance winds. POL is a bit more anchored to local life needs.
Okay, so if the very top end of the sales market is seizing up, but people still need places to live, what's happening on the rental side? Does that follow the same pattern, or do we see something else?
Oh, well, that's the twist, isn't it? The rental market is behaving quite differently. It's actually holding very firm, maybe even strengthening in some ways.
How so? You'd think maybe lower sales prices would mean lower rents eventually.
Not necessarily, especially when supply gets tight. And that's what's happening. The number of new properties coming onto the lettings market was actually down 8% compared to the previous year.
Okay, so fewer properties available to rent. Why is that happening? Fewer landlords buying.
Could be partly that, yeah. If sales are slow, there are fewer buy-to-let investors entering the market, perhaps. Also, maybe some potential sellers are deciding to rent out their properties instead of selling into a weak market, but perhaps not enough to offset other factors reducing supply.
And basic economics tells us less supply, steady demand.
Prices hold up or even rise. Exactly. Rental value growth is quite resilient. In prime outer London, rents actually grew by an average of 2% in the year to August. Knight Frank noted that was the strongest annual growth figure they'd seen since October 2022.
So people who might have bought are now renting, adding to demand, while supply shrinks.
That seems to be a big part of the dynamic. The need for housing doesn't just vanish because the top-tier sales market gets hesitant.
Okay, so let's try and summarize this for everyone listening. What are the key takeaways here?
I think there are two main things. First, you see how sensitive prime central London is to specific policy, like tax changes aimed at international wealth. It causes real paralysis there. But prime outer London shows more resilience because people move there out of necessity.
Right. Policy hits PCL hard. Necessity buffers POL. And the second takeaway?
The rental market squeeze. The slowdown in sales, especially at the top, seems to be contributing to less supply coming onto the rental market, which is keeping rents surprisingly strong, even pushing them up in outer London.
So the freeze at the top has downstream consequences for renters.
Definitely. And that leads to maybe a final thought to leave people with. If these policy changes create such deep hesitancy at the very top, and fewer properties are changing hands overall,
Yeah.
how long before that lack of churn, that lack of properties moving through the system, starts to really impact those necessity buyers too? The families needing school places, people needing to move for work. If the whole chain slows down because the top is frozen, what happens then?
That's a good question. A potential logjam effect rippling downwards,
Hmm.
something to definitely keep an eye on.